All right, everyone, can you hear me? Good, good? Okay. Well, I'm about to give you your 8th welcome to the city of Charlotte. I'm Greg Belanger, Vice President of HNTB, Practice Leader for the Charlotte region. Through delivery of innovation and public transit solutions, HNTB is partnering with transit authorities such as CATS to better connect people and places in the community across the country. Much like what CATS transit system has done for Charlotte. At HNTB, we're an employee-owned company of over 6,300 people that plan, design, and construct rail and public transportation systems and facilities for all modes and all phases of the project life cycle, including feasibility studies, environmental review, conceptual design, final design, program management, construction management. We also support great organizations such as the Community Streetcar Coalition, who supports the advancement of streetcar as part of expansion of mobility options. With that, I introduce to you a man who needs no introduction, the chair of the Community Streetcar Coalition, Mr. Dan Bauer.
Afternoon, everybody. I had 3 jobs today. One was to welcome you to the lunch, but Greg already did that. So this is welcome number 9 to the Coalition Summit. I know we have a couple of new faces in here, so I want to make sure everybody feels welcome and understands what we're trying to accomplish here with the Community Streetcar Coalition. The second thing I want to announce is the Coalition has created a new award. This award is called the Champion of Streetcar Award. It is meant to recognize the efforts of just absolutely outstanding efforts of individuals working towards advancing the mission of the Community Streetcar Coalition and its members. This is not an annual award. We're not going to be handing it out at every summit. It's meant to be as needed, and we'll know it when we see it. The third announcement is we're actually naming the award after the first recipient of the award. That's Congressman Blumenauer from Oregon's 3rd District. So I think it's fair to say there's no more deserving recipient than Congressman Blumenauer when it comes to thinking about who's done the most to advance the mission of this organization and its membership. I think it's possible we may have set the bar slightly high here. I'm not sure it's going to come up anytime soon where we're going to have somebody who's been in elected office for decades, absolutely committed to the advancement of this organization's mission. So I look forward to future years and thinking about who's going to be the recipients of these awards and all the efforts of this group. Against my better judgment, I have invited a few peers to say some words here. It might blow up our agenda a little bit, but I want to take a step back because I have to assume as a congressman your day-to-day life can seem like maybe you're not making much progress on any given day. But hopefully you understand the impacts over decades and your commitment to the effort and has led to these outcomes that we're seeing today. So I'm going to invite Mr. Gustafson here to say a few words about the global impact and the time frame associated with the streetcar movement, and then Tom Guerin from Kansas City is going to try and bring it back down to a local level so you understand the impact that Congressman Blumenauer has had at a hyper-local level as well as at the national level. Rick? Now, Rick has on a tight leash here. We have an over-under of a minute. Go for it.
It's really a pleasure to recognize Earl Blumenauer as our congressman, and I wanted to share with you a long history of his effective and consistent advocacy in public service. His public service career really started in 1972 when he was elected to the House of Representatives in the state of Oregon. Not stopping in 1973, he was the chief sponsor of the bill to create the Oregon Department of Transportation, the first Department of Transportation created in a state in the United States. In 1976, he was elected a county commissioner. Lots of things went on for his 8 years there. We'll move forward. 1986, he was elected to City Council of Portland and was assigned the Transportation Commissioner. In his first speech in 1987, he called for a streetcar loop to connect all the central city districts as part of the Central City Plan of Portland. He supported the effort to study how in the blazes to do this streetcar. It was really 6 months after the light rail opened in 1986. But he was elected in 1995 to Congress. And in 2001, the first leg of the Portland streetcar opened with Charlie Hales as the city commissioner from Portland, succeeding Earl. In 2002, Earl introduced the Community Streetcar Development Act in Congress, calling for a set-aside of capital improvement grants for streetcars. In 2004, the Community Streetcar Coalition was formed really to help coalesce support behind that legislation. And in 2005, the authorization bill included small starts. And small starts was the attempt at a compromise in that. Moving very quickly, 2009, Earl Blumenauer writes a letter to new Secretary Ray LaHood, urging that $500 million be dedicated to streetcars as part of the Tiger grants. LaHood answered that they don't dedicate to specific modes, but the final tally was the federal government provided $475 million under the Obama administration in Tiger grants for streetcars, and was a great movement toward that. And in 2012, that streetcar loop Earl called for was opened for service. And the streetcar loop that connected the central city that he called for in 1987 was built only took 25 years to get it built for him. And he's been a consistent supporter of the coalition, as you know. That's quite a record, and certainly deserving of a Lifetime Achievement Award.
Good afternoon. Tom Guerin with Kansas City Streetcar Authority. Congressman, I really just want to say on behalf of properties around the country that aren't in Oregon, thank you. That your years of support and dedication and commitment and belief in the opportunity for the federal government to support innovative missions of local government, advancing transportation projects that could have a generational impact on how we grow our communities has had an impact. And so on behalf of all the properties and all of the projects around the country, I want to say thank you for that commitment. You've shaped our city in Kansas City. In fact, just a quick story, it was about 10 years ago. You may not remember, you were in Kansas City meeting with our Congressman, Emanuel Cleaver, and our mayor then, Sly James, on an idea about how we advance streetcar about the capital investment grant program, and very interested, like you were earlier this morning, in what are the opportunities to better leverage the federal government through strategic investments to do the things the cities need to do. And we were successful. In fact, we advanced the starter line project, fortuitous as it is today. You're sitting next to Secretary Foxx, who, through your efforts in the legislature, was able to help us secure money. So the Secretary Foxx could come back to Kansas City in 2016 and grant us a Tiger grant to actually implement our starter line project. So thank you from Kansas City. Obviously, thank you from properties and projects around the country. They've had a legacy impact on our city and how we're growing, and it's because of smart transportation investments and folks in Congress who care about the outcomes and the opportunity to do things a little bit better than maybe we did yesterday. So thank you very much.
Appreciate that, Tom and Rick. Tom, you said exactly what I was going to say, which is your willingness to take good ideas that you discover at the local level, whether it's Portland or anywhere, and turn them into federal policy so we can all advance our mission and our objectives here is absolutely incredible. So without any more pomp and circumstance, let's go ahead and award this fine award, the Earl Blumenauer Champion of Streetcar Award for 2024.
You know, I announced that I was going to retire at the end of the year. And if I'd known people were going to be so nice to me, I would have retired years ago. Actually, true story. Some of you know Peter DeFazio, who the erstwhile chair of the Transportation Infrastructure Committee. Peter's a good friend of mine. We've worked together over the years, and I've tried to help him decompress because he retired last year. Peter, you might think, would be concerned about moving his family, making a transition to a new life, tying bows around his legislative accomplishments. Peter was obsessed with, what do you do with these? He was in Congress for 38 years, and people hand these things out, not just to everybody, but you collect them. He didn't know what to do with all the awards. You just can't leave them on the street. It's got your name on it. He raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for an archive at the University of Oregon. They don't take awards. It was a major challenge for Peter to try and figure out what to do with this. But I appreciate this. This is one that I will cherish. It means a lot to me. Our relationship with the streetcar is part of what makes, for me, the greatest difference in terms of public service. I've been able to work in communities across the country on streetcars, bicycles, light rail, animal welfare. Being able to watch what happens on the ground is really exciting. And to listen this morning from the reports about the properties around the country made it all worthwhile. It makes me smile, dealing with the progress that's being made, some of new people, old friends, making a difference at a time when we have some challenges in urban America. I feel every time I'm making a speech, I ought to apologize for the United States Congress. It's frustrating, but people on the ground can't kick the can down the road. We have to accept the responsibility, and being able to work with you in partnership, particularly in areas like transportation. We just passed the largest investment in renewable energy in the history of the world, and these resources are now playing out around the country. People are focused on making a difference, and having a chance to have a partnership like this is really, it makes the trip worthwhile. Actually, it was quite a challenge getting here from Portland, Oregon to Charlotte. American Airlines, Madam Mayor, it was almost like your Amtrak experience yesterday. It was canceled twice, shifted. I was on sort of a regional carrier, Fly-by-Night Airlines, I think it was. I was in the very last row, seated between, in the window was a sumo wrestler with a urinary problem. And a person with a therapy chicken on their lap. And it was a trip to remember, as well as being here with you. I do appreciate the work that is being done around the country. We need to be able to refocus our efforts at the state and local area to give the federal government some guidance. We have unprecedented federal resources. I've been working for years to raise the gas tax, to try and get money to Peter DeFazio to spend on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. We hit a gusher. Billions and billions of dollars that are here. The challenge is, can we spend it wisely? Can we access it? It's going to be a challenge for us. I think we're up for it. I think you're up to it. But we've got some running room now dealing with transportation infrastructure, because this money is going to be gone. Funding resources based on the gallons of fossil fuel consumed is a downward spiral. It's not sustainable. The approach is going to require some form of road user charge, which is moderately controversial, at least if you don't call it a toll. We've got our work cut out, be able to deal with sustainability in terms of trying to cut through some of the partisan. I'm trying to think of a polite word to describe it. There is no polite word to talk about that dysfunction. And we're going to have to reimagine what we are doing with the transportation systems, with urban America, with changes that are taking place in terms of the workforce, transit ridership. These are all in flux. Luckily, we do have an administration that is committed to rebuilding and renewing America. We have money in the pipeline that Congress is not going to be able to claw back. And we have lots of things to do to have a low-carbon, equitable future. I look forward to being able to work with you, and in 38 weeks I become a civilian. And I look forward to working with you on these projects in a different capacity, because there's so much at stake to be able to make sure that we have livable communities where people are safe, healthy, and more economically secure. And the Streetcar Coalition is a critical part of that infrastructure, and I look forward to working with you to be able to realize the vision of your ideals. Thank you very much.
Hello again. How's the chicken, everybody? I suppose that didn't come from Portland. It's my honor to introduce to you our distinguished Mayor of Charlotte, Vi Lyles. Mayor Lyles is now in her 4th term as the Mayor of Charlotte, which is the nation's 15th largest city with nearly 900,000 residents. Charlotte's one of the top fastest growing cities in the United States, and one of only 3 cities to have grown double digits each decade since the 1960s to today. Because of this, Mayor Lyles had led efforts to anticipate and plan for growth, focusing on key efforts of affordable housing, community safety, transportation infrastructure, and she most recently launched a comprehensive plan for 2040 to establish community-driven growth guidelines. In addition, under Mayor Lyles' leadership, CATS opened a 10-mile light rail extension, a 2.5-mile streetcar extension, while simultaneously planning and designing for much more. Earlier in her career, Mayor Lyles worked for the City of Charlotte as a budget analyst, a budget director, and assistant city manager before becoming a consultant for non-for-profit governmental organizations in 2004. In 2013, she was elected to the City of Charlotte Council and appointed Mayor Pro Tem in 2015 by her peers. In 2017, she was elected Mayor of Charlotte, becoming the first African-American female mayor of the city and the first former city administrator to serve as mayor. Under her guidance, Charlotte has flourished as a vibrant and welcoming city that embraces diversity and innovation. Among its recent accolades, Charlotte is the #1 fastest growing tech town in the U.S., a top 10 rising city for startups, and the #1 city in America for growth in female-owned businesses. As we gather here today, let us applaud Mayor Vi Lyles for exemplary leadership, her dedication to public service, and her unwavering commitment to making Charlotte a better place for all. Please join me in welcoming Mayor Vi Lyles to the stage.
Do you ever wonder who they are talking about when they're introducing you? So let me just say, I want to say welcome to Charlotte. I hope all of you are enjoying this great city that we have, a place that I call home and have called home for a very long time. Very fortunate to be here. So good afternoon, everyone. I am hopeful that you'll walk around and see a lot of our center city because we have a lot that's going on. So I hope you'll enjoy yourselves. Spend as much money as you choose to. So feel free to do that. So as mayor of Charlotte, sometimes I'm confounded by the way that we have grown and what we're doing. But I want you to know what an honor it is to serve this community. This is some place that's pretty special, and we talk about that special effort that we put forward often. Now, I have a script here, which I'm going to try to stick to most of, but I would hope that you will understand if you live in a city like Charlotte that's growing so fast, it brings both challenges and great opportunity, and we're trying to cope with all of those. But I think that the bottom line of where we are today, once we begin to think about what are our values, and this is what I've always talked about, I think that we have to give people a decent place to live. I think they ought to have the ability to work in a job that has dignity, and we need the ability to move them between those two efforts and two things that they do. So I believe that when you talk about what you do, when you're talking about transportation infrastructure, I have become a believer of the foundation of our future is about mobility for people. I believe everyone should have the opportunity to feel like that they can be safe and they can work throughout our community in a reliable way that makes it possible for them to live their best lives. And I also believe that we've had the challenge of connecting that all together. So I want to talk a little bit about Charlotte's journey. You know, I think it's really great that we're growing in terms of business and population. We've also grown with our transit system. In 2021, we celebrated the extension of our Gold Line streetcar system. Now, Congressman, this wasn't just a milestone in economic development. It was a step towards providing needs of our community to ensure equitable access to have the ability for essential services, opportunities, and we are still working every day around that concept. Right now, Charlotte is in a place where how many of you know what a Dillon state is? So when we are in Charlotte, or all of any town in Charlotte County, inside of Mecklenburg County, we have to ask the legislature for permission to take any really significant action that we want to have. And we are working very diligently to do that, to bring together the idea that we have something in Charlotte that can actually benefit the entire state of North Carolina. That we're working with our legislature to get the right mix of voices to forge governmental partnerships that drive progress in transit mobility. I would say this is that because I've been working on this for about 3 years, maybe a little bit more, it is not for the easy people. It's not an easy job. But when you start thinking about a city of 900,000 people, and you're talking about sustainability, and you're talking about how you want to continue to grow and have a quality of life, we have to do something different. And we have to focus on those things that will connect all of our values together, but will also drive forward mobility for transit, particularly mass transit in our city. We're working with our state government, we're talking with our county commission, we're talking about the leaders in all of the towns in our county, because we realize the most important thing that we can do is to do this work together, that we can actually accomplish something that's significant. 3 years is a long time to talk about transportation, and I guess some of you have been talking about it your whole career. But my effort, I think, was always driven around the idea of just keeping up so that we can continue to thrive, so that we can have discussions around equity and inclusion. These are the things that make a difference in the quality of life. And since being in office since 2017, I've been mindful of this. I often think about what could our city be if we take that next big step. And I'm hopeful that I will be here when that next big step happens. But I know that the foundation that we started with came with a person in this room that's pretty significant who came. I'm going to tell the story. Let me just stop. Okay. I'm going to tell the story about how I got elected to office. So in 2010, we were hosting the Democratic National Convention. And Anthony Foxx was actually one of the major leaders in this effort. And we had gotten this convention. It was terrific. Obama got nominated and he got elected, which was really, really cool for us. But Anthony was the mayor at the time. And so one morning I was up and I was thinking about what would I do next, because I had had a job with the convention, but the job was over. Everything was all dressed up and moved out of town. So I called Anthony Foxx and I said, Anthony, you know, I am really sure that you have a lot of things on your plate, because Anthony was trying to get a streetcar at the time. And I was like, this is something that's really important. I have skills, Anthony. I used to, be a facilitator, and I'm someone that worked in government. And I said, you know what? I'm going to run for office so that I can help you do your job. And he said, "Bye, that is just great." Now, I've known Anthony since he was this big. And themselves from Johnson C. Smith University to the Center City, where they can have internships and jobs and things that we hadn't even thought about. The opportunities that people don't quite understand when you're talking about transportation, it's not about the car. It is about the people that need the ability to move around. So I have to say that I'm probably standing here because Anthony Foxx abandoned me. I'm probably talking about streetcars and transit because Anthony left me that project. But I also say that what Anthony has done in this city has really been tremendously forward-thinking. I mean, he believed in the city potential for a longer time than I ever even thought about. And he always took challenges on head first. Now, I'm too shy to do that, but he has actually built something that makes the city special. That streetcar is going to be expanded. It will eventually help people move around the city in a way that we can't imagine, but I'm sure that's what Anthony imagined. So, he went on to be the 17th U.S. Secretary of Transportation. He continues to do this work of advocacy for transportation, but he also does the work for equity and inclusion. He is a jewel in our crown. So welcome to the stage. I would like to have Anthony Foxx, our keynote speaker for today's program. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. It's wonderful to be back in my native city, back in this convention center, which I have been in and around this building so many times. Mayor Lyles, thank you so much for the introduction, wonderful introduction, and also for your leadership of this wonderful city. Charlotte is lucky to have a mayor with the kind of experience you've had over, not just as a mayor, but also having been a city administrator before. I said this a long time ago. She was and remains the best prepared person to do this job we've ever had in the city. So thank you for your leadership. I will take issue, though. I didn't leave you because the streetcar project that was that you all have seen received a 50% federal grant that came from the Department of Transportation, which I presided over. So you had some help. Didn't leave you completely. So look, let me also say a great word about Earl Blumenauer. Anyone in the last 25 years who's come to Washington, D.C. to work on anything having to do with transportation knows who he is. As I was saying to the mayor, he wisely determined that his most effective place in Congress to push for transportation support was not the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, but the Ways and Means Committee that decides how revenue is raised in our country and helps to deploy that revenue across all areas of government. His vision, his leadership, his courage have left an indelible imprint on cities all across America. And it is my deep gratitude to you to be here today, to see you honored in the way that we did today. Now, I've now taken to the world of academia, and as a result, I'm used to talking for long periods of time without folks having an adequate opportunity to ask me questions. So I will talk a little bit today about what I see, but I'm going to talk a little bit in reverse. I'm going to start with some history here about both why streetcars are so important as a component of overall transportation systems, but really how we got here. I remember when I was a younger person, maybe that's high, I don't know how tall I was, Mayor. There was a fight in the city over where to put an incinerator. And the place where the city was intending to place the incinerator was on the west side of town, which was where the African American community was situated. And I remember a number of people, Joe Champion, my grandfather, lots of people rising up to sort of say, no, not this time, we're not going to take this. And they were successful in staving off that project. But to the uninitiated, it might have seemed maybe little irrational anger at the possibility of a project like that happening in our community. But if you look backward far enough into U.S. infrastructure, you can see where some of that anger and that concern came from. And that's what I want to talk about today, because it's relevant to the way that we advocate for streetcars going forward. So, first of all, you all heard of roads before, right? Well, we pay for roads in this country through Well, we used to pay for it through a gas tax. Increasingly, we're paying for it through general fund dollars. But let's maybe start with just where it all began, with the highways. The highways were the equivalent of the modern 20th century freedom, individual ability to just go on the open road. And for lots of reasons, our country mobilized behind it. But as you all know, streetcars aren't 21st century technology, although we have new types of streetcars today. Streetcars were very prominent in many cities, including the city we're in. And people would get on the streetcar and go from the suburbs, which were closer in today, we wouldn't even call them suburbs today, to get into work or to do whatever. But when the highway movement started, it was started for a real reason. And the reason was because there were so many communities that were in the outlying areas of cities that were on dirt roads. The Postal Service couldn't even traverse some of those roads. And so there was an effort to sort of smooth those roads over. So over time, developed this idea of the gas tax. That was in the 1920s or so. But there was still this idea that we could build more highways, more freeways, more opportunities to move traffic, not only in the rural areas, but into the cities. And what the freeway folks started to realize was there was an opportunity to reinvent the cities. You know, the Great Depression drove down property tax revenues in cities. There was desperation. People were struggling. And there started to be planted this idea that the cities could be reinvented if we could just acquire enough land to do it. So as time went on, we got through World War II, and troops were coming back, and two things happened in this period of time. First, the government started subsidizing suburbs. Rich Rosenstein has written a great book, The Color of Law, that gets into this. But the U.S. government actually subsidized development of suburbs and required that there be covenants in the deeds that were transferred as part of that prevented African Americans from buying into those communities. And as these troops started to come home, the suburbs grew massively. And along with them, schools, roads, utilities, all sorts of things. And what happened to the cities where the white population hollowed out? The second thing that happened was the Housing Act of 1949, which created the Urban Renewal Program. And we hear legends about what the Urban Renewal Program was, but essentially what it was an effort to put more urban property in public hands for the very purpose of redevelopment, which is what happened. And as a result of that, what happened was so many communities, African American communities, the population that was basically left, were either divided or relocated. And those communities are ones where people often did not even receive fair market value for the property they lost. And so even in a city like Charlotte, you can go down the Brookshire Freeway, Highway 16, which broke up McCrory Heights, or 77 and 85, which also divided so many of those communities. And in community after community, Claiborne Expressway in New Orleans, I-10 in Los Angeles, I-5 in Seattle, the I-81 up in Syracuse, the Staten Island Expressway. I could go on and on and on. Almost every community in our country can tell a very similar story. And so when we think about the impact that highways have had on the urban core, it has been substantial. It's been substantial. Now, I mention highways because, as you all know, out of every dollar on the Housing Trust Fund, we spend 20 cents on transit. And so we're almost programmed to focus on highways, when in fact, the idea of how we move, how we create better mobility, is not even a question we are called to ask. Which is why, when we start talking about other inputs into the system, be it streetcars, be it light rail, be it bikes, pedestrian, we struggle to get on the board because of this history, this inertia that sort of pushes us in the direction that it does. I didn't know all of these details of history when I became mayor of Charlotte. I had a general idea, but I didn't know all of it. But I'll tell you that when I was transitioning, the transition from city council to mayor is not nearly as elaborate as the transition from one president to another. There's no transition team. There's no, booklets or anything. You just, I had a meeting with my predecessor. And in that meeting, we talked about the streetcar. And you should know that what had happened maybe 2 or 3 years before was the city council had decided to put tracks in Elizabeth Avenue, one of the areas you'll see tomorrow, preemptively, before we knew we had any money to even build a streetcar, because we wanted to express the aspiration. We did it over the veto of my predecessor, by the way. And I should also mention that the streetcar was not even my idea. It was in the 2006 plan that became the 2030 plan. But anyway, in this meeting, we were talking about it, and essentially what I took from the conversation was that the project had been placed in the plan with no political intention to deliver it. And that part of the motivation of it was because there was the expectation of a referendum to take away the sales tax in 2007, and this public that lived along the streetcar line was critical to delivering maintenance of that referendum. If you ever have lived in a time when a community you represent has often had promises made and promises broken, then you will understand my reaction to that conversation. And you'll understand why I felt so compelled to support it. That streetcar today does represent promise. When you put a bus line someplace, it's a date. When you put a streetcar someplace, it's marriage. Your community is saying, we're going to be here, and we're going to continue to be here over a sustained period of time. And even today, as I sort of look out at the things that are happening, even some of my friends who supported at the time and now kind of gotten a little wobbly, they'll say, I don't know how successful this is going to be, but, we have to try to make it work. And I'm saying to them, we wouldn't even be having that conversation if the streetcar weren't there. These communities need the help. The second thing about the streetcars that are so critical is that they don't require digging up the neighborhood. It's the whole point. A lot of dedicated right-of-way projects require a massive amount of reconstruction of an area. But the streetcars happen in places that are already populated. You don't have to relocate people to do it, which is different for that particular community than other projects they have experienced. So that's all to say that this history matters to us, and we have to continue trying to understand it. Let me speak out, maybe sort of telescope back a little bit. First of all, I think, given the fact that we are now using more and more general transfers to pay for infrastructure, I think it's time, Congressman, you got 38 weeks to help us do this. It's time for us to rethink our adherence, our strict adherence to that 80-20 split. Transit systems in this country can provide a whole lot of power to help our communities become more mobile if they were not handcuffed by that 80-20 split. Secondly, COVID provided the first recent instance of the federal government providing operating support for transit systems. And many of you know that despite the incredible, Herculean, by the way, Congressman, efforts that have been undertaken to put massive amounts of money into capital expenditures, we still have operating challenges in our transit systems. So we need to continue as a coalition and as a community to push for the federal government to do more to help the operating systems of our transit systems, particularly as that COVID money starts to expire. And then finally, what I would say is that there's a bigger reason why these projects are important. I talk to a lot of people, a lot of students, a lot of faculty members, a lot of people outside of academia about what's wrong with America. Why are we so broken? Why are we so divided? Why are we so split and so forth? And I would say some part of that reason has to do with proximity. Think about the extent to which COVID isolated us. You know, there's a whole generation of young people who are learning for the first time how to have a conversation because they were so isolated. Think about how social media has put people in situations where they can make incredible claims without ever having to look someone in the eye. Think about just how much we sort of watch news that agrees with us and avoid news that disagrees with us. And I say this to say that when you get on a streetcar that's well connected in a city, you're automatically in great proximity with your entire community. And there is power in that. There is power in seeing the person who's struggling because it's not so distant from you. There's power in seeing the professional who's going to work. And for a kid like me, it was great to see people like Lyles and Harvey Gantt and other people who were examples to me. Even if I wasn't talking to them, just the way they looked gave me an idea of what I could be. Proximity matters. And what transit does for us punches above its weight because it gives us an eye-level view of the community we live in. And for all of us who care about coalitions and building and strengthening the opportunity for streetcars in this country, a big part, a big sell for what we are trying to do is that we are also building community when we build these projects. So maybe your community is different than mine. Maybe the reasons that sort of gelled, that brought you together, I remember Sly James in Kansas City, struggling to figure out how to piece together the financing to get that streetcar done. I remember the project in Detroit. I can think about all your cities and remember the struggles that happened, but they're worthy struggles because you're building the community that we all hope to live in. So with that, thank you very much. Congratulations on all the work you're continuing to do. I'm sorry I talked about roads so much. But I wanted to talk about them because roads are not in opposition to us. What's in opposition to us is the idea that transit and what it represents is an anathema to what the country is about. And this is really about what the country is about, what you all are doing. So keep working hard. I look forward to seeing you, and take care. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Do people call you Mr. Secretary, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Fox? They just call you. They just call you. And thank you, Mayor Lyles. We appreciate you. And Congressman Blumenauer, we can't say thank you enough for all your hard work. With that, I want you to finish up your dessert. It looks so delicious. Well, I see some. This table's already. Are you working on the people who aren't even sitting there? Okay. It is. It's good dessert. It's good dessert. The food here in Charlotte is fantastic. And that is why we just do receptions and then we send you out to dinner, because the food is so good. You need to go out and experience this good food. So right now, finish up eating, talk a little bit. We're going to take a few pictures. We're going to do a couple things like that. And then you're going to take a little break, go to the restroom, get ready, walk around a little bit, get your blood pumping, because our next session at 2 o'clock is really going to show us how they do it here in Charlotte, how they bring their partnerships together, how they work across, government and private sector to bring great projects to their community and to their citizens. And you're going to see how it's done, and you're going to get to ask questions so that you can do it also in your community. But that will be at 2 o'clock in the room next to us. So enjoy the rest of your lunch, take a little break, and then please be seated by 1:55. All right, thank you.